What's up, y'all? Welcome back to Bass Fishing Declassified. In this video, I want to share a super sneaky whopper plopper modification that has been a secret in the Ozarks for years and has helped me put a ton of fish in the boat, even behind other anglers in the fall. Let's get into it. So today's bait modification, guys, is actually a really cool one. It has helped me catch a lot of fish on a whopper plopper right behind other anglers. And I learned about this actually from a few different guys in the Ozarks, and it's kind of a little Ozark secret. But basically, a lot of guys like to throw whopper ploppers in an all black color pattern. The all black for me has always been my favorite color in this bait, and also pretty much any other type of topwater, whether that's a buzz bait, a frog, even a lot of like walking spook type baits. Something about that all black color pattern just works really well. I used to fish the Arkansas River a lot as well with that dirtier water, but I found that it works well in clear water also. The main challenge though with that all black bait is that it is pretty stark contrast in clear water, and I find that it doesn't always get the most bites, but I still want a darker color palette. I don't want something that is completely transparent or that's like a shad pattern or a white. So I was always trying to figure out what to do here, and I finally got given the juice after many years. People are holding out on me, and what they're doing is they're taking a clear whopper plopper and taking a black Sharpie. So take that black Sharpie, you find a clear pattern whopper plopper, and you basically paint that up with the Sharpie on the bottom half of that bait. You can leave the top half the way it is because there's kind of a little bit of that stenciling with the scales, and then there's a translucent dark back, at least on this color pattern. I'll link all the color patterns that I've tried this with down in the description so you guys can pick some up. But basically what this does is, it's kind of hard to see here, but when you hold it up in the sunlight, that black Sharpie, it gives it a dark finish, but you can still see through it, and that light penetrates through it. And so what you'll have is basically a translucent black whopper plopper, which is absolutely fire. It gets so many bites, and I have literally gone behind other anglers on banks in the fall and absolutely smashed them right behind people. It's weird. I'm not joking with you. And it's something that I didn't think was going to make that big of a difference, but it really is kind of a sneaky little deal. It's just something these fish are not used to seeing. They see so many whopper ploppers all fall, especially here on like Beaver Lake, Table Rock Lake, like the Ozarks. This is like the #1 bait, at least for several years it was, after James Watson won a tournament with it. And that little subtle difference of painting a clear-bodied plopper with the Sharpie, again, is really good in that clearer water. It's not necessarily something I'm going to throw in like 6 inches of water visibility or like a foot of visibility. There, I'm just gonna go with that all black because it just has the most contrast in that dark water. But when you're fishing in anywhere from, let's say, 2+ feet of visibility all the way to 10 foot of visibility, this is the color. It is my go-to color. I have like 4 of these in my tackle box painted up like this with that Sharpie. You sometimes have to retouch them up, but actually this one I've been throwing for, I think, the last 3 fishing trips now, and you can see it's just kind of fading right there a little bit. I'll probably just retouch that up. I wanted to show you what that looked like, so I'm not going to touch it up, but that hook will kind of scratch some of it off, and some of it will just come off naturally from fish eating it. I caught like 7 fish on this one on my last fishing trip, so it's pretty sweet. So I'm a big fan of this. A couple other things I do with my whopper ploppers that I always try to do, at least, is change out those stock treble hooks for slightly different hooks that come stock. Here's just a stock black one I wanted to show you, and these hooks are fine that come on them. They're these like semi short shank, kind of not, kind of EWG, kind of not hooks, and they're fine. They get the job done, but I actually like to upgrade the hooks to something that's a little bit bigger. This is a 1/0 owner stinger treble hook. It's more of a standard round bend style rather than an EWG, which when these fish slap at the bait, I feel like gets them a little bit better. It'll hook them better. And these are also stout hooks. These are like 2 or 3x strong, I can't remember exactly. And they're just stronger hooks. And the reason for that is because I always throw my whopper ploppers on braided line. I've been doing this for a few years now, and I've, again, learned this from other people, but I always throw it on 50-pound braided line, and I'll throw it on a 7'6" medium heavy, moderate action crankbait rod. And basically what that combination does with the moderate action crankbait rod that has some bend to it, but is still heavy enough to throw this bait, and then those stouter treble hooks and braid, that braid will allow you to lay into those fish as soon as they get the full bait in their mouth without having like set the hook. And so you pin them really well, and then you can just winch those fish in, just reel them in as fast as you can, swing them over the side of the boat. And if they do pull or pulse, that moderate action rod will kind of accept all of that extra movement and give you a little bit of cushion so they don't throw the bait. But the braid, for whatever reason on this bait, just does a really great job. You could throw monofilament, which is the other option. You don't want to throw fluorocarbon on a whopper plopper because the fluorocarbon will sink. It'll get that bait to run kind of weird. So you want a line that floats, which leaves you with mono or braid. And the issue with monofilament with such a big bait like this bigger whopper plopper is it has a tendency to stretch over time. And when you do actually get the fish to eat the bait, if you have a long cast going, you may not penetrate the hooks into that fish super well. And the give and the pull from that line gives those fish leverage to throw this bait. And I just have a lot of issues with this bigger plopper with monofilament line. So I've gone to braid, better hookups. As long as you have a moderate action rod, like a big crankbait rod, take your 6XD or 8XD rod or a big deep diving crankbait, cut that off for the day, put on some braid, throw that plopper around, put those a little bit stronger hooks, just different hooks. Use those, again, 1/0 owner stinger trebles, and you're going to land a bunch of fish. Now, it's interesting because I actually went out on beaver a couple days ago, and I was getting a few fish to blow up on this deal. And it was really weird because I kept getting the hook on the outside of the mouth. They weren't really committing. It was kind of like a weird post-front-ish day, but they were still eating it, so I don't know what was going on. But they weren't fully committing to this bigger bait. And I had like a 4-pounder that missed it. And I was really bummed out because I was like, dang, keep missing it. What's going on? I had one fish where I was actually reeling it, and I have it on camera. Maybe I'll put it in here if I can find the clip. But I was reeling it, and that fish missed it once, missed it again, missed it a third time. And then I basically just laid my bait in the water, and he finally came up and ate it. So what I've found is that if you are throwing this plopper and you don't get the fish to fully commit, they're hooked on the outside of the mouth, you miss a couple, switch up right away. Don't keep throwing the plopper. And I actually had already switched from the buzzbait to the plopper. I like starting with the buzzbait. If they eat the buzzbait, it's a single hook. You can just set the hook, bring them in. But I had 2 fish in a row miss a buzzbait. So I switched to the whopper plopper so that I could get them with the treble hooks. I then caught 2 fish, had that one fish acting weird where it missed it 3 times and then finally ate it, and then I missed a 4-pounder. So I'm like, okay, they're not fully committing to this yet. So I went down to the small plopper. And this is kind of another little deal I do sometimes. I go to the small plopper, which is, I think it's the 78 size, and I'll link the baits down in the description if I got that wrong. But this little small bait will get those fish to react really well when they're really aggressive and up shallow and they're in a couple feet of water, and you don't need to draw the fish out that much. And on the day I was fishing on beaver, those fish were only in a foot of water. They were right up against the bank. So it didn't matter if I threw the small plopper or the big plopper. I like throwing the big plopper when I'm fishing in situations where the fish are setting up a little bit deeper, or I feel like they're coming up from deeper water to come eat it, because it has more drawing power. It plops, makes more sound, and it'll draw those fish from a bigger distance. But literally these fish, like if this was the bank, they were sitting on the bank here, and I was bringing my plopper a foot off the bank, and they were coming from the bank out and eating it. And I was watching them like shark out from the shoreline in inches of water and coming and eating it. So I knew that it didn't matter if I was throwing the bigger plopper with drawing power or the small one. And I immediately switched to the small one and started getting bit like almost every single little transition bank I went to, and I would catch like 2 to 3 fish per transition bank up the river on beaver. And they were absolutely choking this thing. I caught every single fish that bit after that, didn't miss a single one. And that bait change from the buzzbait to the bigger plopper to the smaller plopper resulted in, I think, 15 topwater fish catches on this bait after I switched to it, which is crazy for September. They were absolutely chewing it. And this one is just a all black version. And I don't know why I don't have a version where it's clear. I just have one of these, so I need to actually go buy some of the clear versions of this and paint them up. I have like 4 of these, and this is kind of my go-to bait. I only have actually 1 of these small ploppers in my possession. This is the only one I own. And it was interesting because I didn't even know I had it in my box until I pulled this one out, and I saw it and I was like, oh, that's kind of interesting. I didn't know I even had that. And again, it kind of saved my day. Not saved it, because I was catching them on the bigger plopper. It would have kept working, but it was way more consistent and getting a lot better hookup ratio on that small one. So I found that very fascinating. I did have a little snap on here. You can see on the front of this plopper here, they have a little split ring, which I always try to tie up to that split ring that comes on the stock on the plopper. This one, I was using a little snap, so I took off the split ring on there, put a snap on, and I just had an air top water on the snap, so I just took that off. One thing about the small plopper, I will say, I was throwing this on monofilament, and it worked perfectly fine. I was throwing on a 7-foot medium moderate action crankbait rod, which is what I use to throw like my smaller spooks and stuff on. And these are the stock hooks. They're kind of lightweight, but they work pretty well. I didn't have any issues with them. And because I was throwing monofilament and this bait was smaller and these lighter hooks, I didn't have any problem hooking up with the fish. So I don't think you need to throw braid on the small one. I probably wouldn't even recommend throwing braid with the smaller version. I would throw like 14 to 16, 17 pound monofilament line on this bait and just put it on a crankbait rod, jerkbait rod, something like that, and throw it around. I was throwing a 7-to-1 gear ratio reel with both of these. I like having a little bit faster gear ratio because a lot of times I'm moving pretty quick on my trolling motor, and so my boat's moving, and then I'm trying to reel up the slack from the boat moving forward and trying to keep that bait moving. So because I have that trolling motor on like 3 or 4 out of 10 all the time, sometimes I was kicking up to like 6 out of 10. So I'm going like, 1.5 miles, 2 miles an hour down the bank. I wanted to have a 7-to-1 gear ratio reel so I could really keep up with that bait and keep it moving. So that's kind of what I was doing, guys. Hopefully that makes sense. Hopefully that bait modification will help you out. Again, clear water, 2+ feet of visibility. Get a clear plopper, paint it up with a Sharpie. I'll link that down in the description. And then if you're in that dirtier water, you can just go for the straight black, not a problem. And then the smaller one when they start missing it. So that's kind of what I got for you today. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, subscribe to Bass Fishing Declassified. We'll see you on the next one.